guys can hear me, though I know you cannot see me. Okay, there's a big red line going across the page. And I guess we are live. I do not actually know. All right, does everybody know how to get to the Google thing? Here and see you. I'll just leave both of them on, I guess, because I don't really know what to do at this point. Let me get over here to where you can see me. Producer is still recovering from knee surgery. You guys already know she's online with us. Donna wanted me to thank everybody for their prayers. Everything went well. Filmed my wife taking her first steps on her new knee. That was kind of cool. Hopefully she'll get to come home today. Really does my heart good to know that she was able to get involved in this thing. Sorry, got things I got to do that I would normally have done here. Oh. We won't be switching back and forth. It sounds like the rain has begun and maybe a thunderstorm is on its way. Don't know. So if we get cut off, oh well. As far as I know, we stopped at 28 or something like that. Let's see what we have here. Mouse not working. Here it goes. Yeah, I think we're supposed to start with 29. So I wanted to go over a couple of words here from 28 as we're leading into 29. And one of the words was ta'amod. Now, these are words we've already had. And ta'amod is that word is from amad, to stand, to be firm, to sustain the force of something, And it was used in this case of if the priest has looked and there has been no change. They said if it stood, idiomatically, if it stood, that's what they're talking about. So they're using a mod because it stood, there was no change. So I thought I would remind you of that. And then the next word was ha-michvat. That was the word that we used for a scar. And the reason why I use scar is because though the word is more about a burn, the scar in this case with this particular skin disease is going to look more like a scar, if you will. There's probably going to be a bit of a bump there. I don't really know. I've never seen anybody with this disease. So it doesn't even sound like this disease still exists. But if it does, then that's what we're talking about essentially is a scar. That's our word there. Then the next word was zarevet, which is mark. I put the word mark. They use it of a scab, but it's not really the scab. It's the mark that's left after the scab is gone. A scar, but it's a different word. It's a rough place in the skin. It's used of an ulcer, and it's used of there's a burning feeling from it. It's from the root zarav, which is to scratch, to be scabby or rough, to be dry, to be burned up. It's kind of how you have skin that you can take your fingernail and kind of scratch it off. That's kind of where we're going with that, but it's left a mark is the idea here. I do have a note here. The idea is not that of a scab, burnt place, or rough spot in the skin. What is to be understood is that of a place that has healed over unevenly. That's why it says rough. Thus, a scab, a scar, or any uneven spot in the skin from a previous wound or infection. Because it could have, because a wound could look the same as someone who had an infection of some sort. All right, so the translation of 28 was, and I put in those square brackets, the infection. Oh, darn smackers. Sorry, I have made a huge mistake. I'm going to have to start over. Smack, flapping, Google snots. Oh, man. Whoa! I sat in the chair and it dropped to the floor. That was a funky ride. All right. So anyway, since I don't have my producer here with me today, I'm a little off trying to remember everything. I think I did what I was supposed to do. So I'm just going to kind of rehash shortly these words from last week, which were, let's see, that first one was what? Oh, it was ta'a mode, which is from Ahmad, and that's to stand. That's so when the priest looks and he sees that there's no change, they say in Hebrew that it stood. And for us, we would just say there's no change. And then the other word I wanted to bring back up was ha-michvat, which is a scar that looks more like a burn than anything else. And then zarevet is a mark that is an uneven, kind of a rough spot on your skin. So it's not exactly the same thing, but it's still kind of a scar. Okay, so our translation of 28 from last week was, and if, and then in the brackets, I've added the little squiggly letters, the infection, so that we know what we're talking about when we go back. If we happen to just start there for some reason, that happens. And if the infection under the bright spot or bright mark, because remember, if you go far enough back, we were talking about it being very bright in its color. If it does not change, if shall stand is how it says it in Hebrew, literally. If it does not change and does not spread in the skin, and then I put in the brackets again, even if the dark spot is raised, the priest will pronounce it clean because it is a mark caused by the scar. It's that rough spot, that mark, that burn-looking place that was caused by this scar. It's not actually a contagious disease that anybody would have to worry about. So he's clean, even though it kind of is, because at the very end of this thing healing up, you're going to kind of still look like you have it. So the priest has to know the difference, and that's why he's the one that makes the decision on that. So now at verse 29, where we begin today, this is a new but similar skin condition. A new but similar skin condition. It's not the same one. So we're going to have a lot of the same words. We're going to have a lot of the same variables and things like that, but it is of something different. So our verse says, Va'ish o isha ki yiye vo naga barosh o vezakan. And that last word being your new word. So we start off with naga, which is, and that's a sound-alike word, and we're using different vowels, but that sounds like the N word. So we're using different vowels, and of course, naga is the right way to pronounce it in this sentence. But if you see that word when you're reading Hebrew, it's not the N word, it's just a sound alike. Anyway, it means struck. It's to touch, but it can be to touch in a very violent way. Because even if something, a car, say, kicks up a rock and it hits you in the chest, that's happened to me before on a motorcycle. It's a very violent thing, right? But it's not. It's not to be thought of as violence, as in punching and stuff like that. Though technically, it can probably be used that way, but it's of a hard strike that's going to really hurt, all the way down to what I just did. Right? This word is, but it's more about the boom, than it is anything else. So then we have our next word that's so important here is vezakan. That's the chin. We haven't got to. I was thinking we were at our new word. No, we weren't. Hello. So it's the chin. Now, here's the thing. If you look up in one of the lexicons or these dictionaries that are designed to work with the Bible, they're going to tell you something that is very, very wrong. because they're saying the beard. No, no, no. Mm-mm. It's the chin down here. So we're changing gears. We're going to talk about this other thing. We've been talking about something that's all over the body. Now we're going to get to the face and the head, right? So then our translation, of course, is, and if a man or a woman is struck on the head or chin. Now, not understanding the text, even Ezra argued that the illness only applied to the woman's hair, since women didn't normally shave their faces. Eek. Why then did God say men and women, right? So even Ezra's wrong. Vayikra by Drauzine and Wagner wrote, this verse specifies man or woman rather than man alone, as in verse 4, where man can be understood to include woman. Now we're talking about, we've been on this for a few verses now, something that happens to both men and women. So when you start trying to make this about a man's beard, you're way off base. This is about the chin of a man and a woman. So it's the rosh, the head, which is pretty much, from the neck up, and then the chin. I don't know why there's a specification there, but there is. And so we need to keep this in mind, that we're not talking about some infection in your hair. Now, an infection on your chin can discolor your hair, as we're going to find out. But it's not about an infection in your hair. All right, so oh no, we're not on translation. We're on verse 30. How about that? Oh, you know what? I didn't turn this little wacky-do on. Ruh-roh. Boy, without my producer, my wife of so many years, I'm just nothing. All right. Okay, so now we have our new word is netek. Almost like high tech, except it's netek. Is that kind of the opposite of high tech? Anyway, this word means a scaly eruption of the skin in the head or face, causing itching and scabbing. So it sounds an awful lot like zara'at, which they call leprosy. That's, as you know by now, that's wrong. But that's the word that your English Bibles tend to use. Even the Jewish Study Bible uses it. It's just a thing that started up and everybody followed it. And nobody ever stopped to think, well, maybe that's not what it means. But anyway, so it's something that's going to be a lot like this. It sounds almost exactly like this, because you know that if you have those bad spots everybody's been calling leprosy, that's got to itch, right? I mean, it never came up before, but you know it's got to have itched. Okay, so now we're talking about it's on your chin, it's somewhere on your head, could be on your scalp, whatever, and it looks an awful lot like zara'at. All right, so our translation, and the priest looks at the sore, and behold, it appears deep from, and then in my brackets, within, so that we can understand, deep within the skin. And the hair in it is fine and yellow. The priest will declare him to be unclean. It is netek. His head or chin is, this is how I know zara'at is not the name of the illness. It is contagious. It is zara'at, right? So a while ago, we had all these other rules and regulations, or earlier in the chapter, we had all these rules and regulations. Remember, we kind of stopped for a minute and wrote them down, and I show them earlier in the videos, because those are what became zara'at. And now all we have is a scaly thing on your chin, and suddenly it's zara'at, right? No. Now I know from verse 30 that beyond any shadow of a doubt that zara'at means contagious. It's not the name of a illness. It means contagious. So it's saying that if, I should have probably looked at the word for yellow. I guess we'll get to it. Maybe, I don't know why I didn't put it here, but I hope that I put it in here somewhere. But anyway, because the word for yellow is, just in case it's not there, the word for yellow, there was some argument amongst the sages about it. Oh, no, it's more of a gold color. And somebody's like, no, it's a yellowy orange color. And it's the word for yellow, I believe, right? Yeah, I put yellow because it's the word for yellow. And can that color of yellow have a more of a shade of gold? Sure. Can it have less of a shade and maybe closer to almost a white? It's just barely yellow. Sure, it can. I mean, it's going to cover the spectrum, but you notice we've gone away from the white hair now to this is a discoloration of even white itself. So this thing is called netek, Neteq, netek. And it is zahra'at. It is contagious. Rashi wrote that this infection was apparently found in any place the hair grows. But the subject is very specific about the rosh. It's about the head and the chin. It has nothing to do with, say, your underarms or your legs. Or come on, Rashi, what is that about? All right, so then Vayikra by Drazen and Wagner wrote, the Hebrew Zahov is found in the Bible only in Leviticus. So this is the only place we're going to find it, right? And they go on and say, and it, is, not it, and is presumed to be related to Zahav, which means gold. I think we're taking quite a jump since you're using different letters to spell your words here, right? Because Zahav is a Zadi, where Zahav is a Zayin. So I'm having a little trouble there, unless they've just spelled it wrong, which is, I mean, let's say transliterated it in a wrong way. I didn't bother to look it up. But anyway, so maybe it's a gold color, maybe it's a yellow color. I would say yellow, since this just isn't Zahav. It's just not the word for gold. But to tell you the truth, if it shows up one time and one time only, nobody can know for sure. All right? So I would say if you're finding that you got this scaly place on your chin and it has begun to turn the coloring of your hair, on your scalp or on your chin, I guess maybe you don't get it up in this part of your face. I don't really know. It kind of sounds like you don't. But if you get that and it has begun to discolor that hair in there, any color, I would think that you would have to worry about that. All right. So let's move on to 31. It says, Ve'ki yireh hakohen et nega ha-netak, netek rather, ve'hine ein mar'ehu amok. Remember that? We started with that. Min ha'or ve'sa'ar shahor ein bo ve'hi sagir hakohen et nega ha-netek Shivat Yamim. So we've got a word here that's important to look at, and it's Vehi Segir. We've had it before. It's not the first time we've heard this word, but it's to shut up, to close, to quarantine. That's the word we're using for it here, to quarantine, because you're shut up in your home, or maybe if it's bad enough, you're shut up outside the town, right? So it's a quarantine. That's what we would call it here in today's English language. All right, so our translation is pretty straightforward. And if the priest sees the sore, the netek, see, we've already figured out that it's netek because the hair has changed colors and it's all rough and stuff on the chin or maybe on the head somewhere. So if he sees it, speaking of the netek, and behold, it does not appear deep from within the skin, and none of the hair in it is black, the priest will quarantine the netek sore 7 days. None of it's black. See, the way that Rashi and the guys went with this is that they tried to say that every Jew had black hair. That's possibly be true because there's people in the Jewish line that definitely had red hair. Just saying, just throwing that out there. So the idea that the hair, there's that all Jews have black hair, and thus if it turns some other color, you've got a problem, is nonsensical. Uh, I would say it's more like if the hair has turned black, right? But what do you do if your hair is already black? I think there's a something that I don't know how to explain here, and I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon and say that all Jews have black hair. Sorry, just not going to go there. It's nonsense. But to say that if it turns black is nonsensical because some people have black hair. Why there's that seeming discrepancy, I don't know. Nor does anybody else. It's all conjecture in the end. All right. So let's look at 32, which says, Ve ra'a hakohen et hanega bayom ha-shevi'i vehine lo fasa ha-netek. There's your word. Velo haya, sorry. Vo se'ar zahov umar ha-netek ein amok min ha'or. All right, so now we have the Zahov word, which I have as yellow. It's like gold in color. It's used of your hair, right? What can you say about a word that appears one time in the whole book? To say that it's even yellow is difficult to say. I mean, the reason why they're doing it is because they think that it comes from from the root that means gold. Well, how do you get yellow out of that? I don't know. But most of the commentators put it with the color of yellow. And I've gone with yellow as well. I don't go with gold because I don't see the connection with the root. That's my problem with it. So I don't want to connect it to the gold, and I'm just sticking with the yellow. The truth is, it could be pink. Honestly, it could be pink. Or maybe this is a word that just means discolored. That actually might make more sense. Actually, it would make more sense. Maybe we should change it to discolored. I'm just thinking out loud here. All right, so our translation. And the priest looks at the sore on the seventh day, because now remember, he's been quarantined. He looks at it on the seventh day, and behold, the netek has not spread, and there is no discoloration in the hair. See, I put yellow originally, and then I said hair in it, and then I put in brackets the sore because I was connecting it to that. But let's say that means discoloration, which I'm really beginning to lean toward because it makes more sense than trying to place it with a color. But if there is no discoloration of hair in it, then it would be the discolorization. That makes a lot more sense. And the netek does not appear deep from within the skin, right? So again, we've stopped right in the middle of a sentence again. I hate this about this chapter and verse numbering thing because they break up the sentences and then people read a half of a sentence and make up a whole new religious theory about it, and that kind of stuff drives me nuts. But you got to realize we are in the middle of a sentence. We're stopping in the middle of a sentence. All right, so and the priest looks at the sore on the seventh day, and behold, the netek, that's the type of sore. It's not the other thing we're calling zara'at, which breaks out in the body, where the netek, which breaks out in the head. Has not spread. There is no discoloration of the hair, and the netek does not appear deep within the skin, comma. And then we move on to verse 33. The heat galach, the et ha-netek, lo ye galach, the he sagir, hakohen et ha-netek, shivat yamim shenit. So, of course, we've got a brand new word here, right? Vehit galach. and make smooth. And this is, oh man, this is important. This takes a lot of people down a very wrong road. And make smooth. The heat, pa'el is the, how do you describe that in English? I've always struggled with that. Hebrew has these uh, things in its grammar. It's he, pa'el, pa'el, all these different names for the different ways that you use a word. You threw a ball, you smashed a ball, you slung a ball, you tossed a ball, right? And they have different names for that sort of a thing, and that's what this is. This one is to make smooth. And of course, making something smooth, if you will, would be to make it naked. Now, you got to understand, we're talking in Hebrew. So if a man were to shave his head, that would make his head smooth. He would be naked, which means he would be bald. His head would be bald, and we call that naked. It's like we have something like that in English. If you have a dog that has no hair, they call that a naked dog. And they used to call people who had no hair, they used to say that his head was naked. That's all they mean by the naked there, and no other connection. So you make your face, you shave your face, you have a naked face. Metaphorically, anyone who said to shave a land who devastates it with fire and sword. Think about it. You've taken the land's hair, it's trees and it's grass and it's shrubs and it's flowers and all that stuff, and you've burned it down. You've made the land naked. Kind of like shaving the head and making it a naked head. So it's used of the idea to shave, right? The idea behind the word is baldness, to be bald or smooth. It is not, capital N, capital O, capital T. It is not about how the body is made smooth. It's not how it's made smooth, right? Follow what I'm saying? It's not how it's made smooth. It's the fact that it is smooth. The English word shave has been inserted here because this is how the skin was made smooth circa the 1500s. Now, yes, we do know, at least we've been taught this from the universities, that the Egyptians used to take blades, a knife, literally a big knife, and well, maybe in a small knife, I don't know. And they would shave their head bald, except for one little place here. I've heard it that way, where they let that grow. But I've also heard that they shaved the whole head bald and somehow glued hair onto here. I don't know. I wasn't there, so I don't know what's right. I think science should know the difference of if it was glued onto someone's head or if it grew out of someone's head. But I've heard it both ways, so I don't know. I'm not an Egyptologist, don't know a lot about it. But they do say that they used to shave their heads, except for that little spot there in the back. And also they had the thing that came down here. So shaving, if you want to call it that, shaving with a knife, I don't know if I would call that shaving, my friend. I guess if the knife is really, really sharp, you can kind of compare it. But you can't think of it as a razor blade or a electric razor or something like that. And it's not about the shaving. It's about what happens after the shaving. So if you get hung up on this word meaning to shave, you're going to go down the wrong path, as so many others did. Okay, so let's look at 33, this translation. The Netek has made a bald spot. This is where everyone's gone wrong. And he has not shaved. He has not made it smooth. The priest will quarantine the Netek 7 more days. That's not how this gets translated. That's actually what it says. It says the Natek has made a bald spot, and he, speaking of the person who has it, in this case would be he or she has not made it bald. In other words, we would think of the word shave, right? They've done nothing to make it bald, because there's other ways to make it bald. You could have just yanked it out, right? Or maybe you're scratching so hard you scratched it out. No, you, as the person with this, you have not done this. You're not the one who made it bald. The illness made it bald. That's what we have to learn from this. Because if we don't, we're going to follow the sages and really get it wrong. Rashbam and Seforno both pointed out that the hair falls out because of the infection. In other words, it is not shaved off. They were absolutely right. Rashi, well, he may have been drinking a little too heavy one day when he wrote that a man must shave and leave a 2-hair wide ring around the infection. What? I swear to God, you'd almost have to be drunk to come up with something that nonsensical. I'm going to get up that. Rashi's not my favorite. Virtually all translations say that a man must shave his beard, in complete violation of the law not to shave it. Then the translations go on to say that the man must not shave the scab. Anyone can understand why we wouldn't want to shave the scab, right? Because that's probably going to hurt and probably rip it open. If you shave, you know good and well you don't want to do that. But why would a woman have to shave her face? It said man and woman. Oh, well, it didn't include the man. It said man or it's a man or woman. So if you're right, if Rashi is right, a woman has to shave her face. You can't make an exception just because you don't like what it says, and that's exactly what he did. The subject is stated in verse 29 as a man or a woman. The translations are wrong. The subject has not changed. So, if we know that, then we go back and we say, well, 33 actually says the Natek, the name of this thing on the face and head, has made a bald spot. This illness has made the bald spot, and he or she has not made it bald. The priest will quarantine the Natek 7 more days. But not the person. Your illness gets quarantined. I guess he takes it off and puts it in the refrigerator or something. No, I thought that was kind of strange that it said he was quarantining the illness instead of the person. But you know that the person's being quarantined, right? Because you can't literally pull it off and stick it in an ice box or something. So you know what? That one has to go unsaid. All right. Verse 34. Ve'ra'a hakohen et hanetek bayom ha-shevi'i ve'hine lo fasa hanetek ba'or u mar ehu einena. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. Amok min haor betihar oto hakohen vechibes begadav vetaher. All right. So we got at least one word here that we need to look at. Vechibes, and wash. It's to tread, to trample with the feet. They used to take their garments out to the river, right? And they'd put it in the river and get it all wet. And whether they had soap or not, I don't know. I would imagine at some point they did. But they would stomp on it, and rub it against a rock. And they even take a rock and rub it. And then they take the material and rub it, trying to clean it up. So it's to tread, to trample with the feet, hence to wash garments by treading on them when underwater. It differs from rahatz, to wash the body. So this is the word that is used specifically of washing clothing. Isaiah 7:3, and apparently also 36:2, both say a washer of garments, a fuller, as we know them, one who cleanses soiled garments and fulls new ones, Fulls, in other words, washes new ones. This says begadav. It literally, that means garments his, but his garments is how we would say it. So those are the things that we wear. I mean, this white thing right here is a garment. This blue shirt is a garment. The t-shirt under it's a garment. My pants are a garment. My socks are garments. You know what that means. Your clothing, I guess, is how we would say it today. So our translation. And on the seventh day, the priest looks at the netek, and behold, the netek has spread in the skin, and it does not appear deep from within the skin. The priest will declare him unclean. I just make stuff up now. The priest will declare him clean, and he will wash his garments, and I put in square brackets, and his body, and he will be clean. All right, so, it says has not spread. I read that wrong. At least I think I did. And on the seventh day, the priest looks at the netek, and behold, the netek has not spread in the skin, and it does not appear deep from within the skin. The priest will declare him clean, and he will wash his garments and his body, and he will be clean. Well, Rob, now you read stuff. Well, there's a reason. Even Ezra wrote that a man had to immerse himself in addition to washing his garments. So here's my note on that. I would think the reason why washing the body is not brought up is because they would have done that before they went to see the priest. Think about it. There was that immersion always before they could get to a priest. That always took place. So they've already washed their bodies. Now they got to wash their clothes. And I would go along with that being the reason that people say that, except if you clean your body and then you put on dirty clothes, aren't you unclean again? Right? So where do we go with this? Well, we could look to a man named Umberto Casuto, not Consudo, but Casuto. Now he wrote a book and a commentary on Genesis and Exodus. He didn't live long enough to finish the rest of it. He may have finished it in, I think his main language was German, and he may have finished it and it just never, or maybe it was Hebrew. I'm not really sure. I know he was a Hebrew professor and taught in Hebrew. I think I'm getting him mixed up with Flusser. So I'm not positive what his first language was, but I know he didn't do a lot of stuff in English, right? I know he did some, but not a lot. And so I think that he may have actually finished his work and it's just never been translated. I know into English. I know that the first two works, the commentary on Genesis and the commentary on Exodus, was in fact translated to English. But if you go and get those two books and you'll read your way through it, you're going to find out why they don't talk about washing the body more, every single time it comes back up. It has been stated earlier that the body had to be washed as well as the clothing. Well, actually, here's where we're adding the clothing to this particular thing. But you're supposed to already know that the body has been washed. And that, even though it's not brought back up, it carries all the way through the entire chapter. And it doesn't go away. Casuto explains the reasons behind that way better than I can. So go grab you those two books by Umberto Casuto, and if you want to know the more in-depth reasoning behind that, because he does a much better job than I can. So sorry I'm copping out on you, but sometimes it's better to cop out. Anyway, verse 35. Ve'im paso yifaseh hanetek ba'ur achare taharato. Okay, I want to bring back up, I'm pretty sure we've had this word, taharato. It's cleansing, it's purity, used in the purity of one's heart. Purification and cleansing and cleaning. Well, that's what's happening here. You're washing your body, and that's the purification of your body because it had some icky stuff on it. You wash it off, and now your body's been purified because at this point, the icky stuff has healed up. So now when you wash it off, it doesn't replace it with more icky stuff, right? So that probably sounded funny. Anyway, so this is the cleansing of that and the cleansing of your clothing as well. I would say probably you should think about washing your sheets and stuff like that. Uh, because if you've been icky for a while, it's got to get on your clothing and stuff like that. You should really clean up anything and everything that you've worn and wrapped up in and stuff like that. Probably why we think of the word as garments, because your blankets, and whether you sheets or not, I don't know. I've never seen any reason to think that they did, because they took this thing right here and wrapped up in it to stay warm. Uh, so this is part of your garmentry. So in today's world, you would want to wash your sheets and stuff as well. Okay, so our translation, but if the netek greatly spreads. Now, see, the variable before was it hasn't spread, looks like it's dried up, everything is well. So now we have a new variable, but if it spreads, and it says spreads, he spread, very literally, right, from the Hebrew. But so we say greatly spreads or massively spreads. You can even do that, because the reason why they used the two words together like that was to add the emphasis, to make it huge, so that this is bad. So if it greatly spreads in the skin after his/her, I put that together so you know for sure, after his or her cleansing, right in the middle of a sentence again. We broke it up in the middle of a sentence again. I don't like that. Somebody needs to renumber this stuff. Okay, so now we're going to pick up with 36 so that we can finish 35, right? It says, Ve'ra'ahu hakohen hine pasa hanetek ba'or lo yevaker hakohen la se'ar ha-zahov ta'mehu. There's really not any new words there that I can think of or anything we need to go over. So your translation is, and the priest will look at it, and behold, the netek is spread in the skin, but the priest does not see the off-colored hair. She is unclean. So you got to keep these things together, because it almost sounds like two different things. So let me read them together as if they're one sentence. But if the netek greatly spreads in the skin after his or her cleansing, the priest will look at it, and behold, the netek has spread in the skin, because that was what it just said, it has spread in the skin, but the priest does not see the discoloration of the hair. He or she is unclean. Now, he's not pronouncing at this point that the person is infectious. We haven't had that word in a while, right? Zara'at hasn't shown up since we started. So he's not going to pronounce this person to be infectious. He's going to pronounce the person to be unclean. All right, so now we're going to move on to another variable. Oh, I'm blowing through these things today. Ve'im be'enav amad hanetek ve'se'ar shachur zamach bo ni repa hanetek hato. I said that backwards. Tahor, not horta, but tahor uve tiharo hakohen. All right, so we've got I think this first time this word shows up here. It says be'enav, in eyes his. So we would say in his eyes. The thing that you got to know about the words for eyes, That actually is not like our word. Our eyes, literally, if we say eyes, we're talking about the little roundy things here that we look through, right? But the word ene in Hebrew is actually to flow. It's a place where water flows. And so your eyes were named because water flows out of them when you cry. Just thought I'd let you know that. Don't know. It's not really important here. This is ni repa. That's is healed, if you will. Properly to sew together, to mend, from the sense of seizing and plucking. Ooh, what? This root imitates the sound of a person sewing rapidly. Now that's something that we find in the lexicon. I have no idea how a needle and thread moving really fast would make noise that would be distinguishable. I think that that comes from the time when they had invented the sewing machine, and that was back when they had to pump their feet to pet, to get it to spin and all that kind of stuff. So if you've ever heard one of those, I think that's the sound that Gesenius was referring to when he wrote that back in the 1850s. But does that really belong in the first century? No. So let's not get hung up on the sound of sewing quickly. I think that's nonsense. But it is the idea of sewing up a wound, right? Because we're healing the wound. So when they start talking about to sew together, they're talking about mending. And mending doesn't always come from sewing. Sometimes your skin just heals up itself and you don't need stitches, as we call them today. So you got to realize that we're not talking about sewing here. All right. That probably put it in the translation. Let's look. All right. So it says, but if it is his opinion. And why do I say that? Because the Hebrew text said, as I said, it would have been ve'im be'ene, right? Be'enehab, probably, I think. So, but if in eyes haKohen, right? But if in the eyes of the Kohen, well, yeah, if it's his opinion. If in the eyes of the Kohen means if it's his opinion, the Natek stood in Amad, Amod, remember that word? If it stood, which means if it hasn't changed, the black hair has grown back in it. The sore is what we're talking about. The hair has grown back in it. He, the patient, if you will, is pure, and the priest will declare him to be clean. I'm still wondering if we're using the word for black here improperly. Maybe I'm going to look that up and we'll talk about that next week, because I've got a feeling that I just didn't catch it until today. Something hit me today when we first started. I just think that perhaps we're talking about if the hair has turned back to its normal color. And I think that the zahav is instead of the yellow or the gold, I think that we're talking about the discoloration. So I'm going to take another look at that and spend some time on it. And hopefully remember to talk about it next week. You guys might want to remind me before we get going, because I started to say our producer will be back next week, but I don't know if she can walk that far by next week. She was up walking last night, so maybe so. Okay, let's move on to a new condition. It says, Ve'ish o isha, a man or a woman, ki yiyeh ve'or besaram beharot levanot. Oh, a word we haven't had in a while. You guys remember beharot? Shiny. Remember it says it's a spot in the skin, especially a white spot. This is where it's art imitating life instead of life imitating art. This is it's life imitating art instead of art imitating life. That's the way I meant to say it. Because it got connected with modern day leprosy. which again, that all came about in the first century because a man was slurring, had written a slander, a slur against the Jews and called them lepra, which is where leprosy comes from. Do you guys remember me talking about that? Well, that was a slam against Jews. It was never actually supposed to be used of that disease. And so then they started saying, basically calling Jews lepers. And they began to blame Jews for everybody who got leprosy is because the Jews gave it to them, right? That's where all that began. And somehow that wound up in all the English Bibles, and it wound up in the Jewish Bibles. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, so when they start talking about a white spot and all that kind of stuff, they're still trying to connect this to leprosy, modern leprosy, that we don't even, what we're talking about here doesn't have any connection to leprosy at all. These are skin conditions, not leprosy as we know it today, anyway. So when they start talking about spots and white spots, no, we're not talking about that. The whiteness came from the healing, not from the disease, if you recall. So we have to take the word back to the root, bahar, to be shiny, to be bright. And so when your skin is becoming infected, it has the tendency to become very bright and shiny. Well, that can be, usually it's red. Just saying. I'm no doctor, so don't be taking that as medical advice, whatever you do. All right, so my translation, and a man or a woman, because it will be in the flesh of their skin, very shiny, and then it says white, of course, very shiny white. So then now we're talking about up here on the face for the very first time, we're looking at something that is very shiny white. Doesn't mean that it's very red, shiny with a white spot. It means that the whatever this is shiny white. And it's not even a sentence. Here we go again, right? Okay, I do have time. Then, so we go on to 39. Ve ra'a hakohen vehine ve'or besaram beharut kehot levanut bahak hu parach baor tahor u. And we better look at kehot. That's dark. It's used of weakness. It's used of something failing. It's used of wick as it begins to dim. So the word dim can be used here. Something being faint. It's losing its, like if it's a candle and it's getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and you're losing your light. It's becoming the opposite of bright. All right. And then, so we look at beharot kehot, which means pale. In other words, shiny dark does not exist. And that's an issue here because it said in English, they mostly say shiny dark, a shiny dark place. Shiny dark? Well, the black color can be very shiny on a car, right? There's no such thing as shiny dark, not in the Bible anyway. It's of weakness. So let's move on. Bohak. This is very important, and there's no there. Bohak. We sometimes call it spots, but you know what it really is? Freckles. Freckles. Now they say it's an eruption, which in the East is not of rare occurrence, consisting of spots of palish white, like the leprosy, but harmless and neither contagious nor hereditary. Whatever. It's freckles. It's spots. We get old and we get these spots. I don't have any, of course, because I'm so young. That's getting bad, folks. Okay, my translation. And the priest looks, and behold, the skin of their flesh has, no, their flesh, I didn't write this right. I should have moved this around. And the priest looks, and behold, the shine has dulled in the skin of their flesh. Because it says shiny dark in Hebrew, literally. I mean, well, I'm using English words, but in English, we would have had to translate it literally shiny dark, right? There's no shiny dark. So if we move the words around, it'll make more sense. It'll say in English the same thing it says in Hebrew if I move the words. And the priest looks, and behold, the shine has dulled in the skin of their flesh. Remember, we're on a different variable here. The other one was it's been very shiny. Now here it has dulled. For white freckles have broken out in the skin. He or she is pure, because freckles are not a bad thing. All right, I'm going to do one more as far as I can go today. And that's if the timers are all, because remember I started that late, so I'm a little worried. I'll just do this last one because it's kind of short. It says, Ve'ish ki yimaret rosho ke re'ach hu tahor hu. So we better look at yimaret. Literally, it would be he plucked. Properly to smoothen, hence smoothen. Can you believe it? That's something from the 1800s. To smoothen, hence to polish, to sharpen a sword, to make anyone's head smooth. Does that sound familiar? In other words, to make bald, to tear out. That's what this word means, to tear out, to pluck the hair. It quite literally is talking about plucking out hair. That's really more the meaning than just to make smooth. Then we have ke re'ach. Well, that's bald. So we have our translation. A man, because his hair has fallen off his head, he is pure. So it really should be a man and a woman, because that has not changed. So, and a man or a woman, because their hair has fallen off their head, they are pure. Even Ezra pointed out that the Hebrew word ma'ret means to pluck out, as I've said, and even is right. He's right most of the time. Honestly, he's one of the sages that I particularly like, because he didn't trip over so many things like Rashi did. I'm sorry if you love Rashi, I'm happy for you. I hope you guys have a good relationship together. I just think the guy was a bonehead. I mean, he's right about a lot of things, but he's wrong about more than he is right. So I don't care for him. Even Ezra is more right than wrong. And he pointed out the same thing that I'm saying. This word means to pluck out. Does it mean that you pull it out? Well, no, the disease has plucked it off your face. It has plucked it off of your hair. And so it's not that you plucked it out. It's that, remember, the disease plucked it out. So, and a man or a woman, because their hair has fallen off their hair, they are at this point, or off their head, they are at this point, they're pure. Because that's part of the previous one, if you recall. The priest looks, and behold, the skin of their flesh, the dull has shined. So what they're telling, because this should have been a continuation, this is the same. Again, they broke the verse up right in the middle, or the sentence up right in the middle, and made two verses out of it, so we lose track of it. It's saying that the skin of their flesh, the shine is dull, because a while ago it was about it being shining, and that's a bad thing. And now the shine is dulled. The white spots have broken out all over. The freckles have broken out. The man and the woman are pure because their head has, whether it's the whole head or not, that's not the point. It may just be a spot here. I had a brother that had a round spot in the back of his head one time that he woke up one morning and the hair was just missing. It was just almost a perfect circle. I guess he had that disease. Anyway, the doctor told him it was because he got all nervous about his new job or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like that. All right. Well, that's as far as I dare go. My time here is difficult for me to tell, so I think that's as far as we can go today, and we'll jump back in next week. Before I go, let me tell you, I did in fact uh, turn in my stuff to Oxford this past week. That all is done. I'm waiting on their response. Of course, with the holidays going, who knows? But I did get that stuff turned in. Wanted you to know about that. Again, Donna thanks you for the prayers. I thank you for the prayers. Please keep praying for me for the sleep. I got excellent sleep last night. I'm so happy about that. I woke up every 2 hours and still got excellent sleep. Don't know what that's about, but keep your prayers up for us, and keep your prayers up for Donna, because the pain, the hopefully that won't be too terribly bad. But of course, right now they chopped her leg all apart and put new stuff in there. She's a bionic woman now. Won't be able to keep up with her anymore. All right. Shalom, shalom, y'all. Okay, let me turn this thingy off. Hold on again a minute here. It looks like we lost our little wacky dude. Okay, I'm still working on it. Maybe I'm hitting, nope, that's not the right thing. Try that one, that didn't work. Oh, there it goes. All right, now let me turn the sound off.
בעברית. יברך יהוה וישמרך, יאר יהוה פניו אליך ויהונך, יישא יהוה פניו אליך וישם לך shalom. And in English, may Yahweh cause you to lie down so that you may rest. May he touch and caress you. May he prepare you for what is ahead. May he watch over you. May he keep you from harm. May he cause goodness to grow in you and take away the bad. May he arrange your life and cause you to flourish. May he cheer you up and gladden your heart. May he cause his light to shine through you. May he show you tenderness, favor, and love in his presence. May he show you kindness and be delicate towards you. May he show you his generosity, mercy, compassion, and desire for you as it comes forth from the depths of his soul. May he lift you out of your pit and deliver you from the things that hold you prisoner. May he draw you to his chest and cast his eyes on yours. May he show you his love and desire for you as he cradles you in his arms. May he bear your punishment and pardon you of your sin. May he take you for his bride. May he establish a foundation in you. May he place his name on your heart and mind and make your body his temple. May you be his treasure. May you always be on his mind. May he draw you near and comfort you when you are afraid. May he assure you there is nothing to fear because he is with you. May you and all that concerns you be at peace because he is your friend. Amen.